watching all this good TV that globalization gave to me. That's what I've been doing. You see 90 Day Fiance?
No, I don't. It seems like something you get involved in like a lot.
Come on, man.
It seems like a lot, and I don't want to I don't have any more time to give a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To
I understand.
another. I don't have. I can't give another piece of myself to something.
To another show.
I'm already stretched too thin.
It's pretty gripping, man. It's pretty intense.
Gripping.
Yeah.
Okay.
You get hooked, man. You see it, and it's like
gripping.
You think it's gonna go one way. You think like, oh, this person's a shithead, but then it turns out the other person was shitty. It's crazy, man.
For some reason, I thought you gripping was cool. Like you were saying, it's pretty grip, like bitching, but gripping. Like it's gripping.
You know, it hooks you.
No, yeah, but no. I was like, damn, dog, what is that? Then I'm the asshole.
It's okay, man. That's 90 Day Fiance.
Guys, thank you for listening. Welcome to another podcast. Thank you for coming. Guys, actually, please, right now, before we get into anything, please subscribe to all our stuff. Please like and follow us on everything. Hard Fried History on Instagram and Facebook, and HFH Podcast on Twitter. Please do that. But without further ado, now we're gonna get into the episode. Today we're doing a biggin. That's the way they would have described it. A biggin.
A big kahuna.
A big kahuna. We're doing the Texas Rangers, and it's a Joshua episode. So we're going everywhere. We're going
ham, man.
It's gonna be all over the place.
Okay.
So let's just get into it with so the book I read for the Texas Rangers is going to be Code of Glory, the bold and brutal story, bold and brutal history of the Texas Rangers by Doug J. Swanson. And if you know anything about the Texas Rangers, you need to understand this: the Texas Rangers are Texas, and Texas is the Texas Rangers. If you read the history of the Texas Rangers, you are going to read the history of Texas from its beginning, and that's where our story starts today. In 1823, when Texas settlers are flowing into East Texas and finding a promised land in the area that is now Houston to the Hill Countries, which I love Houston. I live here. Yeah. Promised land.
I don't know. I've got my eyes on other promised lands. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I love it here. I love it here. But promised, I don't know about all of that. So as they flow in, they're
more like the bargained land, if you want to think.
Yeah,
not the promise.
There's a lot of bargains. There's a lot of good bargains there, for sure. As they flow in, they meet natives of all types. You got peaceful and kind of not peaceful natives. You got the Tonkawas, Wacos, Tocanese, Delawares, Cherokees, Catos, and you have your Karankawas. Now, the Karankawas are the name that a lot of people know from this era, from this area, because the Karankawas are reported cannibals.
Okay.
Now did that, how many people did they eat? Was it just a ceremonial eating? Once you eat one person,
it's over. Your reputation is ruined.
You're a cannibal. I mean? You're a cannibal. Just like a stand-up comic.
Yeah, once they know, you're never gonna work a respectable job again.
No, it's what?
Have you heard of there's like a psychological thing with cannibalism, to where some people do it to their deceased. That way they eat them, and then it's almost like they incorporate them, and it's like, you'll never leave. The dead loved one is still with me because I ate of their flesh. You know what I mean?
Nah, man. Then I would have a million chickens inside my balls.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Then I don't have that. Hopefully not.
You never know, man.
So these settlers, they're moving to Texas, of course, to grow cotton with slaves. As a flow from the booming Mississippi Valley cotton region. They're trying to find new land, because land in Mississippi and Louisiana and Georgia gotten super expensive, and this is now the new cheap land. And so when they move here, there's Texas had just became Mexico. Now it went from Spain to Mexico, and there's no assistance against natives that are not as friendly. So what they do is they're getting attacked constantly by the non-friendly natives, the ones that they can't deal with. They do peace treaties. Sometimes it doesn't work. And then in 1823, Austin proposes to the Mexican government the hiring of men to act as rangers for the common defense. And many people consider these men under Moses Morrison, a U.S. veteran of to be the first Ranger force or the first Ranger bands, as we'll know it. The way I'm gonna describe a lot of the Rangers bands, I'm gonna describe them as bands. They're not good. The Rangers are not really a thing until like there's no like continued line of Rangers until about maybe 50 or 70 years from now.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
It's not like an elite squad or like it doesn't have the official stamp until like 70 years. Okay.
No, it's there's gonna be certain squads that are certain companies that are like pulled up that are like these are really good companies. They're the ones, and then they'll disband, and then there'll be other ones.
Okay.
And then the other
but he
ones
did
are not
use
so
the
good.
word.
Yeah, he did use the word Rangers. So so the first thing that like so this is basically like how action worked in 1820s Texas was that like all right, so two people would get killed maybe on the Colorado River, and then the Rangers would go back and they would kill a whole village.
Okay. You don't make a lot of friends.
No, they're just like it's like extreme, like kind of like get back gang mentality.
Yeah.
Like so like the Karankawa specifically, they like a peace treaty that fell out of like if they had not obeyed a peace treaty, and then like the Austin said he gave the command that he was compelled in the view of the security of the people. Austin gave the orders that the militia should pursue and kill all of those Indians wherever they are found.
Jesus.
So
just a free hand,
just a free hand, like
them, kill them, shoot on sight, like
okay. And like it's not like a fun thing for the settlers. Like so, in like 1830, like there was a climactic battle after this guy named Charles Kavanaugh had his whole family killed, including his wife, three daughters. Kavanaugh,
all right,
yeah, and a visiting girl. They were all killed. So 60 Texans attacked the Karankawa camp, killing about 50 Karankawa men, women, and children, until the witnesses said that the nearby river flowed completely red with blood. So, yeah.
Like biblical plague status.
Like biblical plague. Right? Okay. Like that's the type of like wipe them out. In fact, the Karankawas like didn't even like, they kind of like just disappeared from not, there might still be some Karankawas, but they were decimated by kind of the, because by the Texans. Like it said that after this 1830 battle, they basically the legend is that they like ate their like they ate or they killed like the rest of their family members who like they had left, and then went out to an island on the Texas coast and starved themselves to death because they had dishonored themselves so much.
So like Roanoke themselves, I guess.
Is that what Roanoke? What is?
That's a theory that people have, is they like went on another island away from the settlement and maybe named that island Roanoke, but then they all died because they just starved.
Are you talking what wait, I don't know the story. What are you talking about?
The Rowan, the settlers who disappeared at there was like a one of the first earliest American settlements like off the coast of Virginia.
Oh no, if it don't have black people there, dog.
Okay.
I'm not fucking with it.
I don't know if they did, actually.
I'm not fucking with it.
Might not have. I don't know.
So another reason that the kind of Mexican authorities were like super interested in like in these American immigrants coming to Texas, other than cotton and the money that came from cotton, would be to like fight the Comanches, because the Comanches are a group of Native Americans, indigenous Americans, who like before the Spanish introduced horses to America, they were just like they picked berries. They hunted small game in the Eastern Rockies. And then with the arrival of the horses, they became the most feared and powerful tribe of the American West. Like literally it's saying like the Comanches like went from nobodies to they got them horses and they became the most expert horse riders that ever existed. Like they like talking about the like you have those like the you have kind of that image of like a Native American like shooting a bow and arrow from under the horse.
Yeah.
Like that type of shit. That's the type of shit that they did.
Or like saddle into the side of the horse and using the horse as a shield.
Yeah, like doing all that. They were known for their horse tricks, and they were known to just to live with those horses and be able to expert horsemen.
Yeah, gymnasts on horseback.
Yeah. And so that's the that's the big dogs in the Texas area that like these settlers,
Of
they've kind
course.
of defeated the Karankawas, or they've exterminated the Karankawas, better yet. And
Yeah.
now if they expand west, they get closer to like San Antonio and Austin. Now they're running into what the Mexicans, the Spanish called the Comancheria,
Okay.
which is if you they named the whole area the Comancheria, which is a badass
yeah.
name.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't sell it. Like the Apaches and the Comanches just gave the Spanish like too much. They're just like, we can't even be up here.
Yeah.
So
but that's the whole reason they were inviting settlers, is because they were like, we need somebody to be out here.
Yeah. It's too much.
You wanna have at the Comanches first, or
yeah,
we can't. We don't want to go anywhere near them. You know, you guys are free to try it out. You know, you go ahead.
You guys are gonna make us money off cotton and like be the human shield against the Comanches.
Cannon fodder for the Comanches.
Yeah. That is, we're down. So
we did it.
So of course, Texas Revolution happens in 1835 to 1836. The Rangers take part in the Texas Revolution, but we're gonna move past that. So the most of the Texas Rangers actually do their actual function. These Ranger bands would be like, they were to defend the settlers against the Comanches. They started picking up like the tools of the Comanche. You have guys like Benjamin McCullough, who was a soldier. He fought in the Texas Revolution, and he followed Davy Crockett from Tennessee to Texas and was one of the early Ranger personalities. The next big fight that like the Rangers had with the Comanches was in March 19th, 1840. It's the Council House fight in San Antonio. So they were the Comanches, who like never did peace treaty, like weren't a peace treaty type of people, like came to the table, like they were getting like wiped out by smallpox, and they were like, all right, we're gonna come to the table and we're gonna trade, we're gonna do a little peace treaty. And they came to this council house in San Antonio, in like the middle of San Antonio, right by the Alamo. And they're negotiating. It's a bunch of like Ranger bigwigs, Texas bigwigs, negotiating with these 12 chiefs from the Comanches. Chief Magura is there, and he's there with this girl named Matilda Lockhart. Now, Matilda Lockhart, like they had abused her. So like there was like, she had wounds, she had scabs everywhere. But specifically, they had like burned off her nose to where there was no more of her nose left. It was just a massive scab on her nose. And this is like somebody's like niece, who's in there, and they're just like, and they're all like pissed, like what the fuck, like at how she's been treated. And they're like, all right, well, where are the rest of the girls or women that you guys have taken? Like, where are the rest of the captives? And Chief McGurl's like, look, I don't have those. Those belong to other bands. I'm just this. I have her, and you can. And he tells them like, you can purchase the other ones with blankets and ammunitions. And then he just ends it with like, how do you like that? In like a very defiant tone. And they're like, no, you're not leaving this house
until we get the others.
So they try to take him hostage. The Comanches like rush him, and then try to dip out of the council house. The Texas guys gun down all of the 12 chiefs in there, and then gun down part of like some of the family members. I think it's like 24 people in total outside. So in that, they kill all these chiefs, and it basically it incites retaliation from the Comanches. So the Comanches, in retaliation, Chief Buffalo Hump, not a great name.
I mean, how big's the hump?
I mean, how big is it? That's the real question. Chief Buffalo Hump raises the Great Raid of 1840, which is the largest raid ever mounted by Native Americans on white cities in what is now the United States. It went from West Texas through Victoria all the way down to Port Lavaca. So like to the coast. Yeah. They were like, it was like fucking, they had
past the Nueces? Because I don't know where Port Lavaca is.
So like through like it went past like further west than Austin.
Okay.
And then it went past Austin through Victoria. Victoria's like not that. It's you know where Warden is?
Mm-mm.
This is just southeast of Houston. This is all Texas geography for people like, what the fuck is this? So they went through Victoria, and then they hit the coast at Port Lavaca at Port Lavaca. So like they basically went through all of Texas.
Wow, and you know what? It is telling because it is Still barren out
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
It never recovered. I'll tell you that.
There were people in the city was called Linville, but there were people like at Linville, which is now Port Lavaca, like who like they had to get into boats and they like saw like the Comanches just burning down their entire town on the coast.
Okay.
And like so the Comanches like pick up a bunch of like cattle, horses, all like stolen prizes, and they're like, all right, we're gonna, now we're gonna go back to the Llano, it's called the Llano Estrada, which is just like the West Texas plain. They're like, all right, we're gonna head back there. So what happens is the Rangers are tasked with like with going after them. And on August 12th, 1840, they engage in the Battle of Plum Creek, which is like more of a running battle. And the only reason they kind of found the Comanches is because they were like herding these massive cattle. Like it was just this massive train of fucking like thousands of people. So the Rangers technically win, but the Comanches escape with most of their prize. And this is like the first
shit ton of cattle and horses.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
And this is like the first time the Rangers used a native style of like fighting, moving, and then attacking on horseback.
What a revolutionary thought, you know?
Yeah, I mean, look, they were picking up these Comanche tricks, and like they're obviously the Comanche are better at than them, and also like they were using like flintlock muskets at the time.
Yeah, it would be really hard. Now, I was
they were getting
being
fucked.
a sarcastic dick, but it would be really hard to like shoot accurately while riding on horseback. You know, that would be difficult.
You can see there in this time like they're also like that hatred is growing. They already don't think much of indigenous people in general. Like they already are racist, but like specifically to the Comanches, like there was one guy, I'm forgetting the name, but he was like in the book Code of Glory, he was like just stabbing this Comanche woman like through her like her chest, and she was still alive, and people were like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? He's like, I came here to kill Comanche, and I'm gonna do it. And he's just stabbing. Yeah. So they're like
brutal.
It's constantly like a growing, because the Comanches aren't like all right, I don't know everything about the Comanches. I don't want to generalize, but the stories that I heard about the Comanches are multiple stories of like taking babies and just beating up against a tree.
Yeah, I've heard some of those as well. Not of the Comanche, but of like the Shawnee and stuff.
Yeah,
kind of when there's some. Yeah, there's blood. There's a lot of blood.
So then, John. So next notable Ranger that comes into the picture is Captain John Coffee Jack Hayes. He is the guy who like really takes it upon himself to be like, hey,
we're gonna build this into something.
I'm gonna build my fucking company of Rangers into basically just the Comanche.
Okay.
He just is like, his whole thing is like, we're just going to literally become like everything that we do is going to be like we're gonna be able to ride horses just as well as they can. We're gonna be able to drill just as well as they can. And he states, and his company operates on the frontier of West Texas, and they operate basically as Comanche fighters, and they become very, 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 very skilled Comanche fighters and good at almost beating them at their own game. This is also when in the 1830s, 1840s, something happens that's pretty interesting. The Texas Navy ends up like it orders some revolvers, but it gets disbanded because the Texas Navy keeps revolting and mutinying, and then I think Sam Houston ends up like just disbanding the Navy, and he sent the revolvers get sent to the Rangers, and those revolvers are like the Colt 1836 5-shot revolvers.
Okay.
So
so now they don't need to do the whole like pipe down the tube trick.
Yeah.
Okay.
But this is also like, Colt wasn't a good, that gun is really shitty. The 1836 5-shot Colt revolver is a super shitty gun. It's known to blow up in your hand. It's known to it's a shitty firearm. But the Texas Rangers, in their battle with the Comanche, they love it because they're in this fast-paced type of combat.
Yeah.
And it gets in it like
probably close quarters too.
Yeah.
So you don't have to worry about accuracy as much.
And they would rather have this than like a one-shot. Yeah. And they take it on as their own. And you have people like Samuel H. Walker, who joins Jack Hayes' company of Rangers, who are like writing about like, I love this gun, and it begins the partnership that kind of shows that the Colt and the Texas Rangers, the Colt revolver and the Texas Rangers kind of become synonymous. So again, their duties were at this time, the duties of the Rangers are to fight the Comanches and then fight Mexican robbers who attack whites. But they're not as worried about white robbers who attack Mexican Texans or Tejanos. So there's a guy named Marbury Mustang Gray, and he has his raiders, and they basically the Nueces Strip, which is the part between part of Texas, South Texas, between Nueces and the Rio Grande. They're just fucking ravaging all of that part of Texas. And this is kind of goes into like the Juan Cortina story about like whites dispossessing Mexicans of their land through bad contracts and force. And that goes in, the force is part of that Mustang Gray's guys and his raiders.
So it like the bad blood starts earlier than Cortina, but it's like, it was existing prior to.
Yeah. So in late summer of 1842, Mexico invades Texas, which is something I didn't know. I didn't know they invaded Texas. Again, they invaded Texas and they take San Antonio.
There's a French guy. It was a French mercenary named Adrian Woll at the head. So it's another instance where the French just pop up.
French are everywhere, dude, and it's weird. It's real
kind of weird. You don't hear about it, but they're everywhere.
So the Rangers and volunteers and Texas Volunteers at Salado Creek defeat the Mexican army, but on the way back they ambush and kill 36 Rangers in what is called Dawson's Massacre, which is not as good of a TV show.
Not as good. It's much. They tried to be too edgy with Dawson's Massacre. You know what I mean? They didn't allow themselves enough wiggle room on
you gotta build
character
it up.
arc. You know what?
Exactly. You got to build it up. So in retaliation for this invasion, and for Dawson's Massacre, the Texans, which at this time they were called the Texians, which is a whole different thing that I'm not. Which is a really bad name. So they raised a small army to attack into Mexico, 700 men led by General Somervall's, called Somervall's Expedition, or the Mier Expedition, in November of 1842. The funny thing about General Somervall is President Sam Houston, president of Texas at this time, put Somervall in charge because he thought that he wasn't worth shit, and he wanted this to fail. He knew that they needed to do something, but they were so broke that he was like, they're like, we can't do a war right now. But he knew to assuage the kind of the
heat
at the time.
These boys are fired up, they got to kill something.
So he puts Somervall in charge, and Somervall, he knows like Somervall's gonna fucking fail because he can't lead shit. He's a fucking idiot, jackass. So the people, Rangers are part of this expedition. Includes Jack Hayes, Ben McCullough, and Sam Walker. So, and just to kind of give a color of like the type of people that are like in this group and are like flowing to the independent nation of Texas, a lot of like weird cutthroat people from like Missouri, Arkansas, Tennessee, and Louisiana. Just anybody, if you ever like got in trouble in Texas and anywhere in the US, you were like, sorry, I'm a Texan now. So,
GTT.
Like, for example, there's a guy named Samuel Bogart. He was at the Battle of New Orleans in 1815, but he was court-martialed for stealing and discharged for inability, which I don't even know what the fuck that means. Then he moved to Missouri following the Mormon War, where he burned the houses and shot the cattle of Mormon. And Joseph Smith described him as having a zeal for the cause of oppression and injustice that was unequaled. And then he became a judge in Missouri, and then he got in an argument with his election opponent's nephew, and then shot the nephew and killed him, and then fled to Texas.
This man was running for office?
Yeah, run for office, killed the nephew of his opponent, and then it was just like
well, I'm definitely gonna lose now. Yeah, so let me just get the fuck out of here,
So the 700 Mier expedition or Somervall's expedition starts out. They go to Laredo. And even though Laredo is on the Texas side of the border because it has a majority Hispanic population, they end up just attacking the town.
Okay.
All right. And then they cross and they go to like Guerrero, and in Guerrero, which is also on the border, they end up like they it turns into like just a shit show. They're like not, it's not a real army. So they're just going around attacking random shit. And they're also like stealing a bunch of shit. A bunch of people are just looking for cash all the time. They're like threatening people saying, give us this amount of money. We won't fuck up this town. It's like,
Okay.
so
A
that's,
little racketeering, no big
yeah,
deal. Don't
they're
worry about it.
taking on that fucking color. Um, and, so at Guerrero, General Somerville, like, it's just like, all right, dude. But this time, like, people have started leaving because they know it because of how bad it is. Like,
Mhm.
like the high-minded people are like, yeah, this isn't what I signed up for.
Mhm.
So by the time they get to Guerrero, General Somerville is like, I'm calling it off. We're just gonna go back, and he turns around. He tells everybody just to turn around. But there's 200 that continue on to Mier. And these 200s are like the hardcore. There are a lot of Rangers in this, and they continue on to Mier, and they get captured, and they get captured in Mier by like the Mexican army, because then they face a real fucking army, and only
Mhm.
200 of them,
Yeah.
and they get captured, and this like begins the saga of you know of them going to prison, and then also what will end in what's something called the Black Bean incident. Now they go to prison. They're like basically in a labor camp. It's fucking miserable conditions. And during this, there's this thing called the Black Bean incident.
Mhm.
Black Bean incident is when the 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 authorities in Mexico uh, decide to execute 17 of them. Now that seems harsh, but in reality, they could have executed all of them,
Yeah.
because once you turn around, like once like General Somerville turns around, this isn't like a real army anymore. Now you're just marauders.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying? So only executing 17 of them, it's like that's not that like that's it's rough, but it's still like
Yeah.
that's not the craziest thing I've ever heard of. This is
Maybe
like
they didn't like have enough bullets, and so they're like, all right, we got to figure out a way to make this seem like we're being lenient.
maybe maybe
Maybe it
maybe.
was just all supply line problems.
So the Black Bean incident gets its name because they they individually like they basically the way they choose who gets executed is they get like a bowl of white and black beans, and they have them pick randomly out which one. They just have them pick randomly. Then there's this gambler from Austin who's like with them, and he's in prison with them, and he has to pick. He's like, biggest gamble of my life, boys. And then and then he picks, and then he gets a black bean. He's like, just my luck. And then so they end up shooting. They were gonna shoot 17, but then they end up shooting an 18th, which is the kind of the leader of these guys. This guy named Ewan Cameron, Ewan Cameron, or Captain Ewan Cameron.
And he got bullied.
And he got shot. That's what he got.
Okay.
So they shoot 18. They shoot the 17 that picked the black beans and Captain Ewan Cameron. Now, Ewan Cameron is an interesting guy because Ewan is a ranger. He is also somebody, if we remember a little bit ago, he is somebody who served with in Mustang Gray's Raiders.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is the color of the people that like
These are
these
the
people.
guys.
These are just outlaws.
Yeah.
These are just fucking outlaws who like have signed on for a money getting operation.
Hmm.
And it goes into like a wider thing of like that during this time in America, there was a lot of stuff going on called filibustering,
Hmm. Hmm.
about how like, it would be like, it'd be like a random group of like military people, civilians would go try to invade, say, Cuba, which actually
Yeah.
happened 2 or 3
Hmm.
times. They try to invade Nicaragua. They
Yep.
try to invade Mexico, for example,
Hmm.
and take some territory, and then they would annex it to the United States.
You see, that back then they called it filibustering. Right
Yeah.
now we just call it a coup,
Yeah. No, I mean, if you really want to talk about it, the same
like
thing
an armed
happened.
takeover of
True,
of a territory, and then we're taking it into the Union.
No, but the filibuster, we still do that. We still do that. You remember there was like a year ago, 2 years ago at this point, or in between that time, in Venezuela, there was like a bunch of like Green Berets and Navy SEALs just were like went
Yeah.
on a mission just to take like, but not they're civilians. Went on a mission just to take Maduro like hostage. That is filibustering. That's not out of the
Yeah.
normal. That's actually just American history.
Yeah, this is what we do.
Just what we do here, dog. So they're all they kind of after a while the rest of the guys who are in prison get released. Texas gets annexed on December 29th, 1845. But they're still like burning to get back at Mexico for the perceived injustice that it was to kill 18 of them, which really they could have.
I mean, how many did they kill in Laredo and Guerrero?
I don't have the exact numbers on that, but like,
if we want to bring up numbers,
yeah,
like they who was in the wrong on this one. I don't know if we want to. I don't know if we want to drag that up.
It's a weird injustice. It's like they take this super to heart. So when the Mexican American War comes around, which goes from April of 1846 to February of 1848, the war is personal because of the Black Bean incident to them. So the Rangers rode out front. Sam Walker, the Ranger we talked about before, becomes a hero, and other Rangers become heroes because of journalism is like they're blowing them up. Like they're newspapers that are getting their first look at like Texans in action, and they're like ride on horses. They act like Comanches. They don't like when everybody else is kind of marching to go shoot at each other in a line. They're on horses riding around shooting 6-shooters, and they're at the head of the spear. Particularly they
crack jokes sometimes.
They
Some
crack
of them
jokes
are kind of funny.
They're like badass stories coming out like about Jack Hayes, like him, like so like the Rangers get into an engagement where they're outnumbered, like they're not ready to like engage, and Jack Hayes goes he like says to the other Mexican officer who's like this young like Mexican like captain or officer is like, hey, we should duel. We should have a duel first. We should have like a sword duel or a sword fight, something like that. I think it's a sword fight. And he like they both go out there to have this sword fight. Jack Hayes has no idea a sword fight. But he just kind of give his people time to get ready for the incoming battle. The lieutenant goes to do his sword and goes to apply his sword. Jack Hayes just shoots him twice in the fucking head and walks back to his line.
Like, just some low down bullshit,
sociopath shit.
Yeah.
So kind of keeping it going, Walker like he goes on a recruitment trip. That's how popular it is. Like he has like women when he goes from like town like waving at him with like handkerchiefs and shit. And he lobbies the war and on this recruitment trip he finally meets his hero Sam Colt, and he lobbies the War Department. Sam Colt at this time was basically like not, I don't know if he's bankrupt, but like his factory has shut down. He wasn't making guns. He lobbies Walker basically lobbies Sam Colt to he lobbies the War Department and gets him a contract so he can start making guns again. And Walker also gives him a list of specifications of things that they would like, which include a larger, heavier gun with a longer grip and a 6-shot capacity. And that gun that he creates is the Colt Peacemaker.
Financed by government cheese.
But you see in this that the Texas Rangers are like, they're basically instrumental in what we think of as the West. And they basically create some of these stereotypes on their own scratchings on paper.
It's a good point.
So Walker goes back to the war and he's killed in the Battle of Huamantla. Huamantla. I don't know how to say the word.
HU is a W in I think it like Aztec even.
Okay, well, all right, don't upshow me. Don't upshow me. So his troops, his troops murder, rape, and pillage and rampage after his death in what is known as the Rape of Huamantla. Atrocities that happened in the Mexican-American War were rampant. You have like shit like the Rack and Sackers. After like one Arkansas Rack and Sackers. After one Arkansan was killed in this town, Agua Nueva, they put 20 Mexicans into a cave and like scalped them in the cave, and we're making like crosses, like real
Yeah, that
real
sounds
sick
pretty fucked up.
fucking
Yeah.
shit, like the Arkansas people doing weird shit.
This was actually the season finale of Dawson's Massacre.
Dawson did. I mean, there's more massacres to come.
Okay. Well,
A ranger named Adam Alcins. He like went alone into a part of Mexico City, and a mob attacked him, and they basically like they cut him up so much that people said you could see his heart beating, like
damn.
just out in the open, like. And so he died, and then like the Rangers went back to that part of Mexico City and killed 80 people.
Okay.
Well, there was one incident where like some like young toughs, local street kids are like throwing rocks at the Rangers, and then the Rangers killed 10 people. Like it's like they just don't like they meet any type of like agitation with insane force. So basically the war was like a war between Mexicans and unstrained like Ranger vengeance about the Black Bean incident, which was at 80 kind of tops 18 if we're going to be
if you really want to drag it up.
So specifically something that happens is the departure of Santa Anna. But like they wanted to
I'm sorry, their MO of like being that outrageous in the sight of any sort of, I don't know if you want to call it like attack. It'd be like if I told you like, hey man, your shoe's untied.
Yeah.
And then you shot me in the head.
Yeah.
For that. That's like kind of the disproportionate response that we're working with here.
Yeah. That's what they're
hey man, I think I'm looking at, maybe you should tie a shoe.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
shoot you in the head.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Ranger justice.
That's what we call that.
They want to kill Santa Anna. That's like what they're getting to. Like that's because Santa Anna specifically ordered the death penalty for those 18 Rangers or prisoners. So they have to be talked down from like killing Santa Anna like as the war is ending or right after the war is ending. They have to specifically have to be talked down, and they like. As Santa Anna departs like his palace or wherever he was hiding or wherever he's imprisoned at, like he's like in a carriage, and as he departs, the Rangers are lined on both sides of the road as his carriage goes by, just like watching him leave, like this weird, like these kind of mountain men figures, cowboy figures, just looking at this guy who was. This isn't even like young Santa Anna. This is old Santa Anna with like a peg leg and
Santa
fat.
Anna.
Yeah, like this isn't even like. So Bigfoot Wallace, who served with Jack Hayes, who lost a brother at Goliad, said he in terms of like prisoners, Mexican prisoners, he always turned them loose to run for their life. Like he didn't. He's like I always turned them loose so they could run for their lives. He just said I was pretty hard to beat in a foot race though. I think he means he shot him.
I think so.
I think he means,
or he just like was doing it for sport. Like I'm gonna let him run, and then I'm gonna go tackle him and laugh.
Then I'm gonna go hawk him. Yeah, like so to this type of guy.
Yep, this is the guy.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Ranger. So Mexican American War ends. Then we move on to like Then there's a different Ranger brand. You have the Callahan expedition. This is like at a point when Jack Hayes and Ben McCullough, they've both gone to California. People, do their time and then they leave. The Callahan expedition was a 130 person strong expedition, where they were trying to either fight Indians or capture slaves. Probably capture slaves that in Texas, people enslaved people to gain their freedom didn't go north. Most of the time they went to Mexico. So, and they used to congregate at this place called Piedras Negras, which is a place where the Black Seminoles were, which are the people from the Florida War who found their way to the Mexican border under the protection of the Mexican government. So he specifically went to Piedras Negras, got ambushed by a collection of a Mexican army and a bunch of Seminoles, and then had to retreat back to Piedras Negras, and for some reason just burnt down the town and then dipped across the river.
Okay. I
In
mean,
a
why
defeat,
not, man? You know?
in a defeat that was just a slave running mission, and he's buried in the Texas State Cemetery, which is like the ultimate honor in terms of being a Texan.
Hmm.
And the first black person wasn't buried there until 1996, and that was Barbara Jordan. I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah. It goes to show you what we
What we got?
choose to
Yeah,
honor here.
yeah. Kind of keeping going, kind of the different. The other kind of there's a Western kind of frontier ranger bands and companies, but then there's we're kind of grouping them more by the expeditions at this point. It's kind of an ongoing violence in terms of the West and stuff like that. But in the Antelope Hills expedition, in May 12th of 1858, this is when John S. Ripford, which is it's a guy that you could do a whole episode on. A really interesting guy, really racist guy, put it that way. Led the Rangers, the Catos, and the Anadarkos in a series of fights called the Battle of Little Robe Creek. And it was fighting against the Comanche tribe, and it basically marked the ending of the Comanche being a real like a large scale Comanche raids and large scale Comanche presence in Texas, and basically pushed them into Oklahoma. So they do that with the Catos and the Anadarkos. It's a success, and then a little later, 24 Catos and Anadarkos are killed by a vigilante crew who saw them on their land. The Catos and Anadarkos were on like a hunting they were on a hunting trip, and they were sleeping when this vigilante crew came in and shot them all while they slept. So there's a warrant issued for the vigilantes who are from Erath County, Texas, and they're like, "Yeah, we did it. Of course, yeah, we did it." And Ford has sent the warrant, and he says he said, "I can't." He denied the warrant because he was like, "It's my duty to disobey it to save the state of Texas from being the theater of scenes of violence and homicide."
I mean, bro, where have you been? This is kind of what we do here.
No, that's
right?
That's the thing.
This is our export. Like
it's in this time, or it's all right to kill a Native American. It's all right to kill an indigenous person. It's all right to kill a black person. It's all right to kill a Mexican person. It's all right to do all that. It's and to persecute them at that, he was like, there would be an attack on American citizens, and it wasn't his duty to attack American citizens. So that's the way that and when we talk about the Rangers, and you could say like, oh, they're kind of bagmen, or they're kind of paramilitary for kind of like a white power structure. This is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
You're not interested in a complete justice. You're interested in preserving power structures and being out of the military force of at this time of the white power structure. Their Indian agent, this guy named Neighbors, complained, and then he was killed.
Jesus.
Also, but his killer was found and lynched.
Okay, so one guy.
So that's what I'm saying. They got when the white guy got killed. They went and got the killer for him, but the other killers, there's no point to that. So just kind of going over offshoots of the Rangers. My personal favorite, I think I've talked about them on this podcast 2 or 3 times. The Glanton Gang of Apache scalp hunters, which is just John Joel Glanton. He became a soldier of fortune and mercenary, and led this group of scalp hunters that worked for the Mexican government and Arizona, that just would take Apache scalps, and they almost exterminated the Apaches in their area, and then they would just start taking Mexican scalps because they were sociopaths. Kind of skipping forward here, the Civil War happens. Ben McCullough, who I referenced earlier, is killed at the Battle of Pea Ridge in Arkansas on March 7th, 1862. Rangers kind of go to the Civil War. Also, I could talk about Cynthia Ann Parker, but that's a whole episode in itself, and a whole saga in itself. And during the kind of the only Ranger incident that we see during the Civil War is going to be on January 8th, 1865. It's going to be the Battle of Dove Creek, where in terms of these guys weren't called Rangers, but they were the Texas Western Frontier Guard, which is basically they had the duties of being rangers
Yeah.
at the time. So they were on the western frontier, like West Texas, kind of guarding settlers from Native Americans and indigenous hostile forces.
So just to
Uh,
be clear, the Rangers
yeah,
fought on the side of the Confederacy.
yeah, for sure.
Okay.
All of them. Yeah,
Because you
no,
had your like weird Union elements in Texas, and I wasn't sure because there was all sorts of schisms and stuff. But
I let me take that back. I don't know about all of them, but yeah, they were
yeah,
all the people that are notable. Yeah, they all fought on the side of the Confederacy. So the Texas Western Frontier Guard basically kind of detects this movement of a large group of Kickapoos. Um, these Kickapoos were like entirely peaceful. In fact, they went to people's farms and would be like, "Hey, we're in the area, needing help doing anything. We just want to let you know we're Kickapoos. We got no beef.
we're around.
We're around. We are here. They were on their way to go settle in Mexico. The Kickapoos were just kind of being peaceful, and then the Rangers of the time, the Texas Western Frontier Guard, attacked the Kickapoos randomly, and it ended up getting their asses whooped with kind of 22 killed, um, and only 15 Kickapoo killed. There's some people debate numbers. Some people say more. Some people say less. But it's over. People know that the Battle of Dove Creek, the CSA or the Texas Western Frontier Guard, this kind of the Ranger Force of this time, lost this battle. The Rangers also involved in all the stuff going on with Cortina, but we don't have enough time to go into the old stuff like the 1859 stuff,
Yeah.
all that stuff. Specifically we could talk about the where the Rangers and Cortina kind of meet. Not the forces of Cortina and the Rangers kind of meet is going to be with Leander McNelly. He's best remembered for his special force that operated in South Texas in 1875 to 1876. We kind of touched on this in the Cortina episode.
Yeah.
He's working for Richard King. He was given those Winchester 73s for the first time at King Ranch. And specifically, what McNelly's expedition did was they crossed the Rio Grande and they attacked a ranch at dawn on November 18th, 1875, and they surprised and killed 12 men. It was the wrong ranch, so they killed 12 innocent people. And because they remarked about like how they just froze and then they just gunned them down anyway. And then so
these people were so surprised to see us. It was like we really caught them with their pants down.
So they kill those people at that ranch. Then they go to the right ranch, and then there's like several hundred, like Mexican forces there, and then they retreat. They start running back, and they go back to where they have they dig a trench basically and fortify a position right with their back on the Rio Grande, and they repel a bunch of like different Mexican advances, and like the whole time like McNelly,
this is like Jay and Silent Bob. You know, like, dude, that was the wrong ranch.
Wrong ranch, and there's just dead Mexicans everywhere. So
I'm sorry, I should have laughed.
Yeah, so they get there, and then basically they bluff. They bluff them out of they bluff until like the Mexicans like put out a white flag and like, all right, we're negotiating. And basically the Mexicans end up giving them 65 cattle, and McNelly and his expedition force goes back across the river. They were lucky that 30 of the cattle were actually Richard King's from King Ranches, and they take it back to him. He ends up giving McNelly $1,000 to split between all of the different Rangers, all of the 26 men. And there are literally thousands of cattle that have been stolen. There are thousands of cattle. They got 65. Yeah. They got 65. And it kind of just shows you like, yo, this is how they're just operating as like a paramilitary force for people in power at this point.
Mm-hmm.
That's just all this is. Even being funded and being given guns by people in power. So McNelly is a guy that is, he's a ranger, but he's not, he's noticeable. And but like he becomes famous later on because a guy that kind of rode with him, Napoleon Augustus Jennings, who's a Philadelphia kind of rich kid who becomes an adventurer and then becomes a ranger for 8 months before he just kind of musters out. Writes a book that is just mostly made up about McNelly. He just makes shit up.
All right.
And in McNelly, I think he even like features some in the Lone Ranger, and like it's kind of like just like a figure of Texas Ranger lore that a lot of it's made a lot of it's made
A
up.
lot of it's bullshit.
A lot of it's bullshit. So kind of moving forward, as Texas becomes more, it's settled, and it's now it's a state that's it's moving forward with time. They're the kind of mandate of the Rangers changes a little bit. Now they start going more after they could start going after white criminals because the white criminals are becoming a nuisance to white towns. They're not just raiding Mexican towns anymore, although some are. But you get people like John Wesley Hardin, who's an American Old West outlaw gunfighter, and he killed his first man at the age of 15, and also like he was the guy. I don't know if you ever heard. Yeah, he's so mean. He once killed a man for snoring. He's a guy who actually killed somebody for snoring.
I haven't heard that, but in his I must say, you do not know how loud that man was snoring.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's be balanced here.
Yeah,
it could have been
really, talk about
really obnoxious. You know what I mean?
Like, I mean, it could have been. It could have been. So he kills that guy. He kills that guy for snoring. So he has interactions with like the Texas State Police are after him for a long time, and that's the like Reconstruction era police that were like all black, which is an interesting chapter in Texas history. He's specifically known for doing the thing where he hands you his guns with the handles facing, and then as he reaches for it, he spins it and shoots you. That's like his main trick. So he gets captured by the Rangers. They get a big hurrah for capturing him on August 24th and arresting him August 24th, 1877. And he was trying to pull his gun, but his gun got stuck in his holster. And also, like he got arrested in Pensacola, Florida, which I didn't know. A lot of things about these Western guys. They didn't stay West.
No,
they would like Jesse James was like hanging out like in fucking Kentucky a lot.
Yeah.
So kind of moving forward, next kind of notable thing that the Rangers were involved in the same year, the San Elizo Salt War from October to December of 1877. This guy named Charles Howard fucking wants to buy this salt mine that's like communally shared by the people of all this town in West Texas. And there's this guy this guy named Louis Cardis, who's like representing all the Tejanos against, against Charles Howard. And he wants to keep the salt mine or Salt Lake communally used. Howard wants to buy it. Cardis wants to keep it communally used.
It's like private versus public.
Yeah. So Howard comes in to a general store that Cardis is in, and he shoots Cardis with a shotgun in that general store, then just flees to Mexico. Howard had the sheriff in his pocket. Howard comes back with the Rangers. Again, not on the side of like poor people or anything. And
on the side of the murderer, right?
And he comes back like he's yelling at all town people. He's like baiting them, like he's just being a dick and like swaggering in the town. And they get surrounded in these barracks, like him and the Rangers. And there's the local merchant that brings like $11,000 to like bribe the people who are surrounding the Rangers in their barracks. They work out something where like the Rangers agree to surrender to the townspeople who have like guns on them. There's like 120 townspeople outside the barracks. They still end up executing 3 of these people. They end up executing Howard Atkinson, the local merchant guy who like brought the $11,000, and then one of the Rangers named McBride. And Howard, when he gets shot, he's like, when he gets lined up against the wall, and the firing squad happens, he's like, "You're executing 300 men." And he like rips open his shirt and like yells at them to fire, and they kill him. And then they shoot him in the head after. And then Atkinson, who's the local merchant, he gets shot in the stomach, and he yells "Masaribes cabrones," and he's trying to tell him to aim higher, and then they shoot him also. They shoot him again also. And then McBride, who's the Ranger, was just there looking baffled, like, what the fuck is going on? And that they shot him. There were reprisals by the Rangers later. And then so we keep moving here. Porvenir is a massacre where the Rangers went to this town called Porvenir and pulled like 15 like men out of their homes, and then took them up into like the hills, and then they shot 15 Mexican American boys and men. It came out later though that it wasn't just the Rangers. This is like an international incident because they happened around Mexican
when is
border.
this?
It's 1918.
Okay.
So they end up shooting. They shot 15 men and boys. The U.S. Army was later found to have been a part of this also. I think there have been robberies in the area and stuff like that. And then it's a really strange thing, like, because you're turning these people who like may not have like had any, those people were known like to be like very peaceful people, and they just got slaughtered like that. So the next like in March 25th of 1918, the Porvenir massacre happens in January. In March 25th of 1918, this guy named Ed Neville's ranch is attacked. And it's just him, his son, and like their maid there. They like these kind of Mexican bandito kind of people come out and they attack the ranch. And they kill Ed Neville's son, and then they beat him so much that he was like black and blue, and then they kill his maid. And they like mutilate his maid. They like rape her with firewood and like cut off one of her breasts, like real sadistic shit. And the Ed Neville like hid, and he like had to see all this. And Ed Neville moved off that ranch because he couldn't live there anymore. But his daughter said that he had a black book of 60 names, and he would do his farm work every day. But then at night he would go out with his guns and try to cross names off that black book. And sometimes they would add lists, sometimes they add names, but he was always crossing names off. Like sick shit. Yeah, no, this is like real. This is like that real Western.
It sounds like Fargo.
Yeah, it
sounds like
fucking
Fargo
sick shit
in Texas.
Yeah. So you have the range wars, the free rangers versus the large ranchers. They start putting up barbed wire because the range is being cut off. And the rangers come in on the side of the large ranchers that are putting up barbed wire and are persecuting anybody who's cutting fence. And that's where like they start becoming more detective-y at this point, because now they're actually like, once they started dealing with white people, then they started being like, wait, we gotta see what's going on here. We just can't go in shooting.
So after nearly 100 years,
yeah,
just shooting. There's a method to this. Let's figure this out.
So kind of keep going. We're gonna get into Frank Hamer. It's kind of the next big Ranger legend. He's 6'3", 230 pounds. He wore the Stetson. Yeah, he had a weird ability to call owls.
All right.
He was the guy who caught Bonnie and Clyde.
The guy who Woody Harrelson played?
No, the Kevin Costner played.
Oh, well.
Yeah, it really should have been Woody Harrelson. I like looked at that and I was like, that really should have been Woody Harrelson.
They should have flipped this. Yeah.
Yeah, they really should have done that. So he was known for kind of this 20s era Ranger. He was like the idea of a Ranger. He was brave. He was in oil towns breaking up crime. There's an incident that happens in Sherman, Texas, which is like where there's like this guy named George Hughes who like went to his employer's house about a pay dispute. His employer wasn't there. George Hughes is black. His employers are white. His employer isn't there. So his wife is there. His white wife is there, and he bounds the white wife and sexually assaults her. And then when the cops come at him, he shoots at the cops. They say he confessed to all of this stuff. and then he's sent to jail. The town of Sherman, Texas the white citizens of Sherman, Texas want to lynch him. They like want to lynch him. So they like are outside of the jailhouse during the court hearing, and they send in Frank Hamer. Handle it. And there's like at Love Airport or Field or whatever in Dallas Love Airport, there is a statue that says "One Man, One Riot," and it's kind of like this. It's supposed to be. I think it's supposed to be about Frank Hamer.
One man, one what?
One ranger, one riot. That a ranger can back down a race riot, basically, and that's what it's about. And Frank Hamer is sent to Sherman, Texas, and they're like in the courthouse, and it's like, they're like in the courthouse, and they have to lock the courthouse because the crowd outside is getting very ruckus and getting very crazy. Somehow somebody throws a rock through the window, then somebody throws fire, then somebody like they basically light the courthouse on fire. They put this George Hughes guy, this black guy who's on trial, in a like secure room on the second floor. This building starts to go on fire. Frank Hamer just in his three rangers that he's with, they just like walk out of the courthouse, and with the guy still in the protective room, they walk out of the courthouse. Everybody's out of the courthouse. Frank Hamer and his three rangers just leave. They just go to Dallas and to call the governor and be like, we need backup.
Oh man.
So
what
they
happened to one man, one riot?
What happened? True. It's not true. That's what happened.
We tried it and you failed. You fucked up.
So they go do that. They leave. This guy ends up, I think he gets smoke inhalation and he dies in the room. The fire kind of burns itself out. Then the citizens go in, they get him out of that fucking out of the locked room. They basically take his body out to the street, they cut off his dick, stuff in his mouth, and then they drag him around on the back of some type of truck, car, something like that, through the streets with a chain. And it's talked about like in papers like all over Europe. And it's just like,
so fucked up.
It's like, that
is insane.
It's like, yeah. And it's fucking insane shit. And it's just like there were other rangers there, but they were just defending the courthouse.
Yeah.
Not the courthouse. They were defending the jail, and they didn't even try to go into the riot.
No.
They just didn't even try. Like, so at this time, the Rangers are also like they're also involved in like harassing NAACP workers. And like there's a particular incident where like the NAACP president comes to Austin to like talk to the government or some shit, and then some Rangers and like I think a Texas congressman or something end up beating the shit out of this guy in broad day in the middle of Austin, and that guy like resigns from the NAACP because he's like, yo, I'm done with this shit. So kind of moving forward, the Rangers at this time are kind of any governor's personal force. You have like in the 30s, you have Ma Ferguson. She was just appointing Ma and Paul Ferguson, but you had Ma Ferguson in the 30s. She was just appointing everybody a special ranger, like bartenders are special rangers, like anybody became a special ranger. She just made it
open. You get a special ranger. Yeah. You get a special ranger.
And then at this time, that's when they become reorganized and they moved under the DPS kind of label or DPS organization in 1935. Also, the Rangers are reaching out and working with Hollywood a lot. So this is why you see the Rangers in movies a lot. They were already big because of journalism, and there had been a lot of stories and a lot of books written about them, but they also work heavy with Hollywood to certify that they get the best light. And there are a shit ton of movies that have Rangers in them. Rangers during desegregation, they said they were there to preserve the peace, and sometimes the peace meant that black kids didn't get to go to that school. So like,
I was gonna say, let me guess, they were on the right side. Of this one, right?
Yeah.
If anything I know about the Rangers.
There's in the 60s when in the Chicano movement, when Mexican fruit farmers in the Rio Grande Valley in South Texas are kind of fighting for organizing and doing strikes. The Rangers were sent down on the side of the big companies to break those strikes.
You put down a riot, you don't put down a strike. You
Yeah.
know, that's just kind of the rules.
You know what I mean? So we can keep going, getting it more closer to history. Now you could talk about Clint Peoples and the Billy Soul Estes affair, where there was like a con man who was like basically said that he had dirt on LBJ and about the JFK assassination. The Rangers are involved in kind of like investigating and believing him, but that's a whole bigger
I want to
story
hear that dirt, man.
that we
I
don't
want that
have
dirt.
time.
I want to hear,
The Henry Lee Lucas affair in the 80s, when Lucas rose to infamy after confessing to more than 100 murders to the Texas Rangers and other law enforcement officials. But the journalists and people started to look at it, at all the murders that he had confessed to, and they put things together. Like, he got pay stubs in Pensacola, Florida, but he was accused of doing a murder the next day, or doing murders the same day that he's supposed to be in Florida, the same day that he was supposed to be. So it didn't make any sense.
He couldn't have driven it all.
He couldn't have driven it. And it came out that, like, that basically the Rangers had been clearing cases this way, and other departments had been clearing cases by saying Henry Lee Lucas did it, when they
just tagging it all on him. Yeah.
Which if they hadn't done the work, which, like, what it felt like, that would have been worse than what actually it was. What it actually was, years later, they found out they had done all the work. They knew about him getting paid, him, like, where he was all these times. They just cleared the murders anyway. Because they they knew that it was impossible, but they were just doing.
Yeah, because it's easier it makes us look bad if we have all these unsolved cases in our department. So let's just put this guy's name on it and close the case.
And I think it's also that they were becoming the, like, celebrated thing. As a Ranger, you're like the big guy. This is the big. So I'm, what I can be even bigger if I'm like the guy. I can put my name up there with Hamer and McDonald and fucking McNeely and all those people. So it's kind of found out they say that he was convicted for like 11 homicides, but they really don't think he did 2 murders, and that the rest of them were, he just lied because they would. That podcast.
Yeah, they had that Netflix documentary about him where he's got the worst teeth. That's what I remember of it. It's just awful Texas teeth.
So kind of rounding out, we're getting to the modern Ranger. The Ranger that is now the kind of professional force that it is now, police force. You had your first Hispanic Ranger in 1969, your first Black Ranger in 1988. He was a Black Seminole, which is interesting. In 1993 came the first 2 women Rangers. In mid-2019, there were 159 commissioned Rangers, 4 of them women, 8 of them Black, 34 were Hispanic. In January of this, and this is a pretty interesting story. In January of 1987, Brent Albert Beeler kidnapped a 2-year-old girl named Kara. The Rangers and the FBI kind of surrounded the place. This guy demanded a fucking vehicle, an Oldsmobile, to get out of there. There were 2 Rangers in the backseat of the Oldsmobile on the car floor. And when he got in the car, it's like, freeze, and they got into a gunfight, and one of the Rangers died, Officer Stanley Keys Guffey. And the Rangers now they do a lot of things. They investigate serial killers. They caught this guy named the Railroad Killer in South Texas. But then they also do shit like in 1994, they convicted this guy. They basically investigated and led the investigation of this guy named Anthony Graves, who was convicted of killing an entire family and of stabbing them and then burning the house in 1994. Graves served 18 years. And then after the 18 years, he was released because, as the district attorney said, there's not a shred of evidence tying this guy to these murders. And he was released, particularly that on the evidence that the Ranger had gave false testimony.
Holy shit. Okay.
So, got a little bit of Ranger in him.
Ranger vengeance. I don't know what you're revenging, but, Ranger justice.
They deal with public corruption cases, like Ken Paxton, I think his stuff, like his public corruption shit. They did the investigation for that. Also, they do shit like,
Isn't Ken Paxton still in office?
yeah. No,
Okay,
I think we reelected him from my understanding. I think there was something, I don't know how he's still in office, but I know he definitely had some wild shit happen.
They didn't do their job. I don't know. Maybe they did, and we just didn't give a shit. I don't know.
So like the particular, like, and this is like just how far from like the early days Rangers have fallen.
Yeah.
Lampasas County Clerk Cody Reed refrigerator affair. That's what I like to call it. Where Cody Reed is a county clerk, and there was a refrigerator in the hallway at this county courthouse, and he just like threw it away. But another guy was like, "Hey, that was my refrigerator, and why did you throw it away?" And he like filed charges against the county clerk, and the Texas Rangers had to show up. And they showed up, and they were like, and then they had to investigate, and they're like, "Why'd you throw it away?" Because it was a fucking empty fridge in the middle of a county courthouse.
That was that guy's like the beer fridge that he had at his frat, and he was just hanging on to the glory days. You know what? You threw my fridge. You know how many memories were stored in that fridge? You know, man, come on.
He had he threw it, and they ended up charging Cody Reed with a Class B misdemeanor
for throwing away this man's ratty old fridge. Next up on the docket, the case of the missing futon. You know?
Listen, who futon's missing? Who we gonna call? Goddamn Rangers. So
Ranger justice. So we're gonna get all these cum stains out of this futon.
Who put the cum stains in the futon? God damn it. Rangers.
Ranger justice.
Rangers coming to the rescue.
Find out next week on Dawson's Massacre.
I was a fucking state trooper for 8 years, so I could figure out who put the fucking cum stains on this futon.
On this goddamn futon.
So today's Ranger, if you're in Texas, you will see them maybe driving a pickup truck, maybe fucking a helicopter, I don't know. But they're going to be the guys with the white kind of Stetson cowboy hats on, the cowboy boots, the Western boots, and the circular badge with the star in it. And that's who the Rangers are today. Guys, thank you for listening to this episode. That's all I have on the Rangers. Next week, you gotta come back next week, because we're gonna be doing Bass Reeves, and that's and Bass Reeves might kill you if you don't come back.
And that is also significant because it is the last episode in the Western package that we're doing. We might revisit it.
Yeah,
we might revisit it.
It's so much.
There's so much. Yeah.
Every time we read, we figure out new things, and we're like, "What?
Well, damn it, we should have done this person. You know,
we should have done this lady. We should have. We still feel bad that we didn't get our Chinese. Our Chinese fix, because the Chinese are all over the West, and we didn't get that going, and we feel bad about that.
Let us know if you want us to do more Western stuff. Like, please let us know. Love to hear feedback. You know, it'd be cool.
No, I am blind out here. Please let me know. Let me not. But guys, thank you for listening. Please follow us on our social media again at Hard Fried History on. At Hard Fried History on Instagram and Facebook, HFH Podcast on Twitter, Hard Fried History on YouTube. Please follow me at Joshua B. Stokes on Instagram and Twitter, Joshua Stokes on Facebook. Henry, where can they follow you at?
You can find me Henry E. Price on Instagram, just Henry Price on Facebook.
Guys, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. All right, peace.
Take care.